Okay, so this week it's the emperor, and the emperor is an active masculine principle which brings order to the empress's garden, which, if left to grow, can become a jungle. So the emperor begins the patriarchal world of the creative word, which begins the rule of spirit over nature. And the emperor is the embodiment of logos, or the rational principle. So he orders our thoughts and energies, connecting them to reality in a practical way. This means that he's connected to humanity openly and intimately, and this is where we get the beginning of cultural refinement. For children, this means leaving the nourishing world of childhood and facing the responsibilities of adulthood. The emperor reflects the beginning of community life, where we leave behind our unconscious identities and begin to experience ourselves as the member of an ever-widening group at whose head stands an authority figure. And the negative manifestation of the emperor occurs when the golden ideal of the divine right turns into ego might. So naming things is an important part of the emperor's task, and finding the correct name for things is a creative task. And there's a legend that's appropriate for this. So here's the legend. It appears that Satan, jealous of God's attention to Adam, complained to the Lord, asking that he be put in charge of the birds and beasts in Adam's stead. Whereupon the Lord instituted a contest between Satan and Adam to see who could name correctly all the creatures. He ordained that the winner of this contest should rule the kingdom whose creatures he had correctly named. Satan, of course, flunked the test. For imaginative discrimination and patient dedication to disciplined order are the very last talents in the repertoire of someone whose genius is pandemonium. So Adam won the naming contest and became the emperor of Eden. And that's how Adam, rather than Satan, became our ancestor. So that's that tale. And for creative work, you'd want to use both the empress and with her eros and feeling, and the emperor with his logos and thinking. As an example, they published these successive drafts of Keats' poems, and the initial ones will show how the initial rich imagination of the poet's feeling, his feminine side. And then that was the emperor side. And then the emperor side comes in, and these would be pruned and refined and shaped by his critical logos side to create the finished product. So here we see not only the perfection of what remains, but the beauty of what was sacrificed on the feminine side. And so it's the delicate job of the emperor that he be both insightful and sensitive. So that's this week's archetype. It's all yours, Craig.
There we go. Yeah, well, that was great, Gary. Thank you. I mean, it is it's something we're gonna. I would say that we're talking about the feminine in fairy tales. We're going to especially get to the feminine way in the last part of lecture 11 and how necessary it is. But then you can counterpose that against the order aspect that the logo side gives, and that we really need to be compassionate to both sides, because we need both of them, So anyway, we'll get started here on this one. We're at lecture 11, and we kind of went through just a little bit last time, but it starts out with, what are the seeds? Now, the seeds are in corn, they're corn and poppy seeds. The corn are the symbols of life and death. You saw that they would put them in jars near the hearth, and then at Halloween they're opened up, and that the spirits can come out. They live in this sort of a fig jelly of the corn seeds, and then the lids are put back on, but they represent sort of the womb of the dead. And then the poppy seeds have a little more to do with the hallucinatory aspect of transformation. So they're sort of two different differentiations of what it means to transform through death and rebirth, and then to transform through changing consciousness. And so it's that what the grain mysteries are about really is life and death and transformation. And this brings up what is they call in alchemy the multiplicatio. And this is what the purpose of the Philosopher's Stone is. The Philosopher's Stone emanates a transforming atmosphere which turns everything it touches into gold, or into to really it is, to me, what that really means is it takes away its literalness and gives it a metaphorical, symbolic aspect, which now transforms us. So when base metal turns to gold, that means the literal aspect of it has now it revealed its mystery in a symbol. You know, the idea of taking personality number 2 is what is really living with by your inner law. I mean, this is what it means to know your seeds and act at once, is to live by your inner law. So sorting the seeds has to do with living by your inner law, and your inner law is to live in cooperation with the inner world, to be its collaborator, to bring the images that as the outer world is all these events that happen to us. The inner world is all the images that are given to us, and so we're the empty vessel of those images that come in. So how do we know what does it mean to live by your inner law, and what does it mean to live not by your inner law? And that means you sort the seeds. I mean, in Kat's dream, she's got this mass of chocolate that is filled with toxic goo. And what she needs to do is to remove the toxic goo to leave the divine substance, because that's her inner law. Now, that's not her ego law. It's her inner law. So it's this idea of sorting the seeds. Now, it is the Philosopher's Stone is made inside a vessel. It goes through dissolution in darkness, and then it resurrects. And when one succeeds consciously and positively to relate to the constellation of our inner law, or the constellation of the seeds, or the constellation of the Philosopher's Stone, there is widespread effect, the multiplication, or the multiplicatio. And she mentions too this wonderful saying of the primordial mist. When he says, "What about nature?" He says, "You think nature always comes to an end, but she's only at the beginning." Now, this is talking about succeeding in consciously and positively to relate to an archetypal constellation, to your inner law. You think that nature always comes to an end, but she's only at the beginning. You think nature always knows her aims. The constellation always knows its aims, but it goes much further than that. You think nature has already given everything, but nature still has infinitely more in store for us. So this is what it means to sort your seeds. You know, it refers to the secret fact or facet that when we have related consciously and positively to our own inner law, to our own seeds, our own archetypal constellation, we have now touched universality or the oneness of nature, the unus mundus. Now, how does this manifest in the outer world? In synchronicities. If one can sort these seeds in a fortunate manner, miracles begin to happen. As if in sorting our seeds, it causes synchronicities to occur, and it has an effect on the seemingly on the inner world and the outer world. And there's no causality here. We didn't cause this. Only the psyche can create synchronicities. But the psyche can only create synchronicities with someone who has sorted their seeds and lives by their inner law. So what does it mean to live by your inner law? I mean, you know, the Buddha, you know, when he's sitting under the seat of the movable spot under the Bodhi tree, you know, he's first tempted by kama, mara, by fear and desire, by his shadow side. And then he is then tempted by dharma, social duty, you know, get up and you know, this is the way Joseph Campbell puts it, get up and pick up a picket sign, you know, just don't sit there under the tree. And the Buddha touches the earth. It's called the Bhumispasha, and lets it be his witness for his right to be here. In other words, he's going to live by his inner law, not by one that's set outside of him. He can't live any other way than that. And that's what Jung called living by my own snake. You know, he could not do anything which would offend his own snake within him. You know, I told that story where Tina Keller, after World War II, in their recovery efforts, wanted him to lend his name to their recovery efforts. And he looks at her. First, right at this point, he's writing Ion, Answer to Job, Mysterium Junctionis, and doing a lot of other things. And plus he's ill. He had a racing heart. And he says, I'm doing alchemy now. And she couldn't believe his sense of detachment. But the idea is that he could not violate his inner seeds or his inner law. Now, this is this bringing to order, knowing our nature, our root, our seed, is to clarify the current situation consciously. And if we patiently, if one succeeds in doing so, then one can disentangle or give a positive turn to impossible situations. And how deep these things can go, one cannot say. It has much to do with the feminine Godhead and her uncanny powers. Okay, and and she says it's not just Hecate or Demeter, but women themselves have, to a great extent, without knowing it, rule their own surroundings. you know, and we went through that. I'm not going to go through the again of all her examples, but you know, the idea, and this was, I think, and Angelique is not here today, but she had a very good point, that Jung tend to treat women on an sort of a she says that they had an occult, living women had an occult aspect to them, you know. And I just want to, I showed somebody else this thing. I just wanted to show you. Let's do this. Here it is. Okay. This is Jung's mother, Emily Pricework, and you know, he at one time saw her, a headless man carrying his own head, walk through her door, the middle of the night, you know, and she used to sit behind her father, Samuel Pricework, who's a, you look him up in Wikipedia, he's a very famous, they don't even mention Jung. It's his grandfather, Jung's grandfather. They don't even mention Jung in his biography, but he was, when he wrote his hymns, she would stand behind him and scare the ghosts away because he attracted ghosts. And then I just wanted to show you his aunts. This is one of his aunts. All the Priceworks had this capability, you know, and there's his other aunt. And, you know, and then his cousin, Eileen Pricework, you know, was a medium, you know, and so anyway, he had this sense of the cult. And you know, I just want to mention too, where did we get figures like this, you know, Medusa? What does her manifestation mean? You know, is that just some mythic thing, or does it have to do with a constellation in the outer world too, you know, that comes from not sorting our seeds correctly, you know? And you know, there's also this. Also, I think one of the things we're going to do in learning what the difference between being very, very good and on the side of good and lightness and spirit means, and to be perfect. What does perfection and goodness have? How does that compare to living by your inner law, sorting your seeds, being whole, and being synchronistic with the universe? Are they the same thing? I don't know. I don't think that you can bring all that stuff in to sometimes I'm just saying that the ethical, moral side of what we call good, either through outer religious taboos, whatever, or just the ethics of that, is that your flower and your root? Is it or isn't it? You know, I mean, what does it mean to live by your inner law, and what does it mean to live without? Now, you know, I'm not saying that all of this makes sense in the outer world, but it does, I think, somewhere. And I think the somewhere is in your inner life, that you have to live by your inner law. If you don't, it will grieve, it will shrivel up, the water of life in you will go away, and you'll be living a dry life, a life that is very arid and desert-like, you know. So how do you bring the water of life into you? It's not through following other people's ethics and morals, I don't think necessarily, but I mean, you've got, I just, you know, contrast some of these figures, feminine figures, Lilith, now what does she have to do with ethics or morality or whatever that is? I mean, she has something to do with your inner law. She certainly does. And she has something to do with sorting the seeds, and and you can go through Artemis and Kore and Demeter and Persephone and Hecate and also, the Great Mother. Now, all of these figures which appear in our psyche have to do with our inner law, and they'd have nothing to do with ethics and the moral life. So it's just a point of view that's interesting. Now, if someone has sorted their seeds like this, she says this, and I just think this is such a wonderful statement, that people incredibly blossom in the surroundings of a woman who is in the right relationship with herself, who has sorted her seeds and continues to sort her seeds, who lives by her inner law, not man's inner law, not outer society's inner law, not your inner law. She's living by her own inner law. And she is, Von Franz says a little bit later that a lot of times as women, as Marian Woodman says, we're forced to live as men, and we need to live an animus life. And she says, after a while, you get tired of it and you want to become feminine, consciously feminine. And that's what living by your inner law. If you're living by the animus within you, that's not your inner law. That's not becoming consciously feminine, and she also says that if a woman does not live by her inner law, she says too, it's just wonderful. She says she is like the positive mother goddess who makes the corn grow, if anyone has a relationship with her. And but one who is on the wrong side, she has more like the effects of goddess Hecate and puts the blight of death on those around her. Now she so if someone who sorts their seeds can penetrate this realm and there separate the bad from the good, she does something which corresponds to the hero's deed of slaying the dragon. And this is also sort of women's logos, women's differentiation. This instead of a bird's eye view of it, it is a one by one thing, one by one, close up, nearness, intimate with one by one, and it takes a long time to happen. Now she gives this long story about the boy that witnessed his father's death. They were in a 3 days with his corpse by the side of a river, and then he started throwing knives at people from rooftops, and he has Von Franz. No one could help him. And Von Franz asked her if he had any dreams. He said yes. He was shut in a room where there's a TV, and this is before there were any TVs, so it's very exciting. The door shuts, and a voice said, "You must stay in here from now on, and your life is a failure." And so that was the dream he had before all this happened. And Von Franz said that it was a wicked dream, but it was too plainly wicked. She says it was too clear, and it seemed healthy for that reason. It was a smack in the face, but it was so well delivered It didn't seem psychotic. So she says, who would benefit from such a slap in the face? And she said, being shut up in a room and your life is a failure, who would benefit from that? And she says, a madly, morbidly ambitious person. You know, the voice of the self tells him your life's a failure and you're so ambitious, you know. And so she asked her if her boy is very ambitious and very competitive. No, he doesn't care if anybody's better than him, you know. He's just an average boy. And then then Von Franz tells her that her boy's trouble is unrelated to her accident. It's unrelated to her husband, but it all laid with her. Now, this is before Von Franz knew very much about her, and she breaks down at that. And the idea was that she had within her inner law was of a hero archetype, but she was too lazy to implement that in her own life. So she wanted the men in her life to be heroes. She wanted first her husband, who was sort of a helpless person, not very introverted, and then when he died, then she immediately became hard and demanding on her son. So after she knew that, she just her son, who hadn't been sleeping for months, slept 8 hours and went back to school. So the whole idea again is getting at this, does Jung think that women are a cult? I mean, because they have such a great effect on the outer world. And Von Franz says it's not really, you have to take that with a grain of salt, because she says could be all kinds of husbands, and by the way, this boy had a brother and nothing was wrong with him. So there's an aspect that it's sort of a mutual pact that causes this thing. But anyway, we'll keep moving on from that because we want to get to the idea. That's this idea of sorting your seeds. If you don't sort your seeds, you're going to live. It just has a bad effect on the outer world. And how does this come up again in this vision of the 3 pairs of hands? And we're going to talk about that a little bit. It'll sort of clarify the seed sorting. The 3 pairs of hands about which the heroine prefers not to ask any questions. So she's going to tell a couple stories. A couple other fairy tales. Frau Truda it's a story of a little girl who's obstinate, doesn't obey her parents, and she is told not to go to Frau Truda's house. She slips out of the house, goes there, and at the door of the hut, she sees a man in black, greets her, and then on the stairs, there's a man in green, and then at the top of the stairs, there's a man in red. And they just quickly walk past her. She walks into Frau Truda's room. There's an old witch there with a big nose sitting by the fireplace. The child shivers, she says, who was the black man? And he says, oh, that was just the chimney sweep. And who was the green man? That's the huntsman. Who was the red man? That was the butcher. Yes, but I also looked through the window and didn't see you, but I saw a devil with the fiery head. Oh, said Frau Truda, you saw me in my right form. I have long waited for you, and you make a good light. So she turns her into a piece of wood and puts her in the fire. Now, this is these 3 men are similar to the 3 that show up in the tale of Vasilisa, and they represent sort of this double triad. You've got Mary, the Mother of God, and God the Father, God the Son, and then you have the Holy Spirit. But in this case, with Baba Yaga and with Frau Truda and with nature itself. She has three chthonic aspects. There's her and her three male consorts who have to do with colors. She calls them the devil, but really they're just lords of the underworld. You don't have to call them devils, but the idea is that's the one story. Now she's going to compare that to Vasilisa, who did not ask about the three pairs of hands. Okay, and she and the three pairs of hands, cut off hands, refer to some secret that's closely associated with the mother goddess with her destructive powers at the bottom of an abyss that's of all humans. And Baba Yaga is the personification of nature herself, you know. And so the pairs of hands of nature herself refer to the unthinkable cruelty and the murderousness of nature herself. And human feeling can't avoid being shocked by the cruelty of nature. Animals eat each other, and we refuse whenever possible to even gaze at it. We blind ourselves, we look and then turn away. The mortal shock of discovering how nature deals with her children, the horrors of nature, which no one can swallow and no one can bear to talk about. Now, this is why you don't ask about questions make you old. She says, the fairy tale says it's a healthy reaction not to poke into these things. What the way Joseph Campbell says it is, death and disease is not a refutation of beauty and life. So you don't literalize it. It happens, yes, but it's not a refutation of life itself. And it's not a refutation of the beauty and loveliness of life. So don't dwell on it, you know, literally don't. And this, I remember when my mother, you know, had cancer and she went to Mayo Clinic, they had a sign in this cancer ward of this woman standing amongst all these disasters all around her. And it said under there, something, I can't remember exactly what it says, but it just says, don't look too closely. Don't look too closely. You know, see beyond this, which is before you, you know, because there's a deeper mystery here. You know, I'm not kidding. I don't know exactly what I said, but it was along those lines, and I thought it was very beautiful. So anyway, you know, you know, how, and she says, anyway, how would the fairy tale says it's a healthy thing not to poke into these things or ask too many questions about it. It's horrible. But how would a question help? There are no answers. We can shake our fists at the goddess. Does that help? You know, we'll never figure it out, but it's reality. And it's this abysmal shadow of Baba Yaga, an abyss which we can only look at briefly and then turn away. But it doesn't refute the beauty of life. It kills, nature's secret is this, it kills in the most cruel way, yet it gives birth in the most beautiful way to the most beautiful things. So that's why you don't ask the questions. You don't look too closely at things because they're horrible, but they don't refute. They're not an argument against the experience of birth in the most beautiful way or the most beautiful things. Now she tells about Waldmenschen, this is the second fairy tale, about another reaction of a girl. The parents of an obstinate girl tells her she's to be obedient, but she teases other children cruelly at school. So one day a green woman comes out of the forest and grabs her. Waldmenschen means forest mouth. And he carries her away into the woods to a lot, and where there was a lot of nice children picking daisies, having fun. And Waldmenschen said she must play nicely, and she'll get everything she wants. She'll get educated, but she's going to stay with Waldmenschen. The child is frightened but plays nicely, and then gets good food. But the next day she starts her tricks again, and the other children complain. So the Waldmenschen seizes the little girl, gives her to her three male consorts, who put her through the three water mills in the wood. They throw her into the mill. She's ground to bits, comes out the other end as a hunchback woman, a very old hunchback woman. And what Waldmenschen says, what is old should become young, and what is young should become old. And then when the child sees herself, she's absolutely in despair and downcast. She has to stay like that for some time. But when she's learned her lesson, Waldmenschen puts her through the mill again, but this time in reverse. She's young again. Her father, who is old, is also put through the mill. He becomes young again. And they go home, and she was a good woman after, all that way after. So the nature goddess has this mill which grinds people instead of corn, the mill of youth and old age. It's a milder form of Baba Yaga's mortar and pestle, the old age and youth. It's not of death, and life, and here this goddess is timeless, the great magician who bestows youth and age on people. Now, if you compare what happened to the three girls, in Frau Trude, the girl is silly, infantile, wicked little creature and gets destroyed. In Waldmenschen, she only gets punished, and Vasilisa behaved properly. She did not ask about the three pairs of hands. And by the way, she says that the fact that they had no body attached to him all automatically means you should not ask a question about them. So in the fairy tales and in nature, infantile curiosity is looked on as something extremely destructive. And curious inquisitiveness is not so often punished in heroes, though it does attract destruction to the heroine. And so that Vasilisa does not ask about the hand saves her life. Now, she goes on to say that the idea of this comes up, this curious inquisitiveness in its destructive aspect, when a woman has not worked on her animus, it still works in her, but it's fixed on the mental thinking about relationships, about the neighbors, gossip. So she gets interested in the divorce of the neighbor and wants to know how it came about. Now, if she had been interested in this in an objective way, like why do women and men quarrel, and how does this apply to me, then it would have been constructive. But the fact that she's just interested, but not in an objective way, that's when it is destructive. She remains stuck in this half-developed mental operation. She's not disinterested, but not objective either. And this is typical for the undeveloped animus, and it has to do with the destructive inquisitiveness. And the devil has his hand in it. So the problem of the divine function of evil is something one cannot really touch upon openly, because people always blow up. It's so ambiguous, this problem of the horrors of life, that one can only really do what Vasilisa does. Don't ask questions. Don't look too closely. Don't make it literal. And she goes on to say here about the fact that if you the demonic thinking of Malthus, who thinks that perhaps if we had more wars, the food would go farther for everybody or something. There's this demonic thinking where the woman, the feminine way is that is always the personal, that every feeling, every disease, every person is unique. This is the sorting the seeds thing, one by one. This is the idea of the nearness and the intimacy of the feminine principle. It's one to one, and the idea that every situation is unique and it needs to be addressed genuinely. Now she's going to talk too about doctors. How would we have got medicine without this demonic type thinking? Looking at things, this horrible diseases, but you're going to figure out how to cure them. You're going to, and so you're looking closely. The woman's task is to hold on to the personal side against the cold spirit of nature. No matter how horrible and cold nature is, she needs to hold on to the personal side. The emphasis must be held to the human side, and this is where one cannot act in a cold, statistical way, can't write off any human being. Because if a woman starts to think like that, is always from the animus and has a very destructive effect. She should instead preserve the personal atmosphere between human beings. To create the human atmosphere of eros is one of her tasks. When she doesn't do it, according to Franz, that's coming out of the animus, the cold cruelty, cold side of nature. And that belongs, that's logos. And it's not intimate, it's not nearness, it's cold and impersonal. That's not the feminine principle. I don't know whether you can say that, is that the woman's way? I don't know, but it's not the feminine principle. Vasilisa has to sort the grain, and then the mysterious hands take the sorted grains, and we don't know what they do with them. Now, why couldn't Baba Yaga sort the grains herself? Because she could not do it. This ethical discrimination is something specifically human, which transcends nature. And so Jung says that man transcends the Godhead by being a little bit more conscious, and he can or man or human beings can sort the seeds in a way that nature can't, and nature wants her to sort the seeds. This is the whole idea of she brings up. I'll just finish with the idea of the fairy tales about the liars. Where she goes. The girl goes in to help this woman who's lives in a castle, and she's all black, and through her work, she says, "Don't ever look in that room." She looks in the room, and she finds out through her work, this woman is becoming light again. She's not all darkness, okay, and she closes the door quickly, and then she tells the woman in the castle, the dark woman, keeps asking her, "Did you go in my room?" And she says, "No." And she lies over and over again. And then finally, when she becomes light again, she says, "Had you once said you'd been in my room, I would have reduced you to ashes. But now that you've liberated me, you will be rewarded." So she's rewarded for lying. And there's, Franz says too, that she can't, she meets an Alisan. She sees his horrible shadow within 5 minutes, after about, 6 weeks of analysis, says, you talk about other people's shadow. What about mine? She knew what it was in the first 5 minutes, but she knows she can't say it out loud because it would totally sever their relationship. He has to discover it himself. And so this idea of that, why do you have to lie? Why do you have to tactfully lie? And that's because Mother Nature is ashamed of herself. That's what she says. She's a little bit ashamed of her horrible side because she also has a very beautiful side. She's not proud of the fact that she has a horrible side. So she wants there to be, don't look too closely. Don't look too literally. In the Kalahari Bushmen, when they kill a deer, they immediately put a cloth over its head so that it won't see what's happening. They're tactful about it. They're preserving they're being tactful about these horrors of nature. And the other thing she said, which I thought was very interesting, and if there's anything else, we'll finish it up next time. But it's the fact of that when something horrible happens, that you shouldn't panic. That you need to be the one who, that's also an aspect of this principle, is that you need to, someone needs to be strong. Someone needs to not just totally go into chaos, or you're going to affect everyone around you. If you panic, then you're going to panic everybody, and everybody's going to fall into the pit. When something horrible happens, you need to remain calm. And this is this principle she's talking about here, of that is also a principle. Now, she's tying this in with the with the aspect of the of not looking too closely at the horrible things that happen in Mother Nature, to overlook them, to not look too closely. And I'm sure everybody's had experiences like that, where something horrible happens. Somebody needs to stay calm in this situation. Otherwise, the children around you, and other people, they're going to panic by your panicking too, and she's tying that in with this. It's going to take a little bit more to flesh that out. But anyway, why don't we just have some discussion? This is, now next time, on lecture 12, she's going to continue to talk about the dark side of nature. Now, these 2 lectures, I think, will be very important for us to get the balanced view of nature's way, and not the way of ethical morality and ethical goodness that has to do with the ego and with the human. This is going to give us the way nature operates, and the fairy tales, because they're so much more genuine than any treatise by John Locke or someone who writes ethically. They're not considering the inner world. And by the way, if you try to be good, and I'll finish with this, she says, if you try to strive for the good, now this is what the Taoist kings can't do. If you try to strive for the good, and you try to be good in everything you do, you're going to create all kinds of evil everywhere else. You have no idea what's happening because of this great imbalance that you have created. But anyway, it's a point of view. I'm not saying you have to follow it, but it's interesting to hear it, the dark side of nature. Well, why don't you go ahead, Gary? And I hope this was
Well, now you have me
coherent.
worried about striving to be good,
Yes.
You'll have to explain how to achieve that balance next time. Aline, would you like to lead us off?
Sure. When you showed the picture of Medusa, I immediately recognized myself and some of my interactions with my husband. I blow my top after 50 years. We've been married this week. And, it's normal. It feels normal to me at the time, unless I attach the Judeo-Christian ethics on top of it, of thou shalt be killed, thou shalt be kind, thou shalt just take it, what is it, smite the other cheek, this kind of thing, take it on the other, if you're, all that stuff. And so that was good for me to hear, that not to be too good, which was a saying of my favorite aunt's. Don't be too good in this life. Don't be too good. Now, she was above reproach, this woman. I've never admired anybody so much. She was philanthropic and artistic and all of the good stuff. So yeah, don't be too good, she said when I was a teenager. And I took it to heart, but not really, because the Logos imposes itself on, like Marion Woodman says, on women who have to live like men, very, very strongly so. And so I'm interested in that, about don't be too good, but following your inner law was so meaningful to me in this story, because if you live to being true to yourself, it's not easy to do that. But if you do, you are richly rewarded. And in that way, just like Original Mist had seen himself, or wherever he went, whatever happened to make him Original Mist, was that he advised the leader to be in touch with himself, or else all the people would suffer. It's kind of a contradiction, really, in terms that if you focus inward, you'll be better outward. It's a real duality, I think, for me. Thanks.
I'm thinking of the Starflower shirt. If you want to express yourself humanly to someone, you need to combine your inner constellation with the feeling function. I mean, that's sort of this whole thing of you combine your inner law with the flowers, with this sense of I thou, not I it. How do I combine my inner law with the I thou, with the flowers, the feeling aspect? And then Von Franz says, it's the only time you can talk humanly to someone. And you have to tell them a hard truth. But she says, if you're wearing your Starflower shirt, no one will take offense. Now, you talk about hard. That's something I know is very hard for me, because I don't know if I have a Starflower shirt.
Oh, beautiful. Combining the inner law with the feeling function. I mean, that really, that's something. Dan, would you like to comment next?
Yes, I hope my phone's low and I'm speaking through my phone, but this is also difficult to articulate, but I'll try. It's all about balancing the opposites and how to hold them both at the same time, and it takes depth to do that, and maturity, I think, to do that. And I can see in my own life my immaturity when I was younger, and hopefully I'm getting a little bit better at these things. I'm like you, Angelique, that I blow my top too. Sometimes I panic. Sometimes I can stay calm in very difficult situations, but not always. But so it's just a work in progress always, I think. But about your inner law, I think, and morals and ethics, I think it's very individual. I guess this is my feminine side, and every situation is different. So you can't just have, not everything is black and white. There's gray area. And And that's what you have to sort out. What is the right thing to do in each situation? And that's what becoming mature is, I think. Living with the ambiguity, how to live with the ambiguity and not to be completely baffled by it, which is, I sometimes am. So I guess that's about it.
You know, when my wife and I were just talking about this the other day, I mean, Aline mentioned it, but you know, she's reading, you know, working with people in AA, and there's, you know, there's all kinds of statements about the higher power, but one a lot of them don't like is that God is our Father and He is our children, which is, you know, sort of a kindergarten thing, and so she was having a lot of problems with it. But you know, then we started talking about the feeling function, you know, and the well, first of all, we talked about the inner law, that her inner law is her divine thing. It's not her father, and she's not its child. It's her root, you know, her seed, you know. Now, the one, she's a feeling function person, and so one of her wonderful qualities, Diane, and one I don't have, that she's very clear about what the highest priorities in being alive are. And that is people around her. You know, the idea of being a feeling function person is one who values things in the proper way. She said, or he or she knows what the highest priorities are. That's the purpose of what feeling function is. And they know what is most vital, what is it doesn't have financial value, but it has a living value. What is that? You know, what are my priorities? You know?
Yeah, I guess I just like to add, that's right, that whether we're born male or female, we both have a masculine and we all have a masculine and a feminine side. And that being able to hold those two things is the middle way, as in Mahayana Buddhism, is it's a fine line and it takes a lot of discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Kat, would you like to go next?
Oh God, I've got lots of things going around my head, but I was just thinking about what you were saying, Craig, and just in terms of relationships. I mean, just recently I've heard things what I consider quite shocking, and especially when it comes to what a female is supposed to do and what makes her feminine. You know, as I said, I've heard some things. I think it's like we've gone back 50 years or something, especially in relationships. I was watching these programs or whatever about relationships, and then what is the requirement for being a wife or things like that. And I was shocked by the attitude of basically, and please, I'm not being rude or offensive or anything like that, so please just, you know, but I thought to myself, my God, people are paying money to be told by marriage guidance counselors or whatever. I can only, like a woman has got to subscribe to being basically a cleaner and a common prostitute. That was sort of common, you know, constitute a marriage, or you know, for far too long we've been told we've got to be nice, can't complain, mustn't grumble, you've got to be a certain way of being pleasant, got to be pleasant, you've got to be agreeable, you know. But well, the thing is, life happens and there are unpleasant things in life that happen, and where is all that going to go? All that angst, all that you know, that fear, that's got to go somewhere. And obviously it gets projected out, then you get all the gossiping and everything else. But I can't believe that it's now a requirement. And as I say, people are coaching people that women have to be a certain way as part of a contract for a marriage. You can't shout, you can't yell, you can't be annoyed or whatever. And it's like, what the? You don't want a human being, you want a robot sort of thing. And it's the same with the other flip with women and men as well. It's like, you know, the men have to have a certain amount of money and keep them and do that. And you're like, where the hell is this going? Why? The thing is that we are doing so much to avoid, in some way, conflict. But when you look at it in another way, conflict produces a creative tension. We're kind of doing everything we can to avoid it, but then it's coming out in really toxic and malignant ways where we're tearing ourselves down and each other down, and it's just kind of spilling out into everything else. And it's kind of like we have not got a, you said about not panicking, or, you know, Craig, we haven't got a mental resilience, you know, to cope. Or that's something we need to develop, because it's like we're too busy trying to avoid conflict and have these sterile roles that if you do this, then I'm going to be all right. The minute you don't do that, the minute that you're disagreeing with me, then I can kick your ass out the door, because you're not playing a role or performing a function that I've basically entered a contract in marriage or whatever with you. That's what you've got to do. And I'm shocked, but yeah. So sorry for rambling, but it's, you know, that's not nature. Nature is not sterile. Nature is not a one thing, a robot thing. She is multifaceted. She is, I mean, vibrant, unique, whatever. And why can't you be all things? Why do you have to be a certain way? And no wonder people can't live up to it. No wonder people get frustrated and can't live up to it and possibly want to commit suicide and everything else, because it's not real. It's not real at all. But we strive to do these things because that's what we think is right. And yet we're unhappy and making other people unhappy in the process. So you might as well live by your own seeds. Those that like you will like you. Those that don't can jog on, do one. Do you know what I mean? Sorry. I'm going to stop now. Oh my God.
Well, I just, you know, Von Franz tells the story there of this woman who yelled all the time at her kids, and, you know, every day told them to go to hell, you know, and that they were the devil's children. And yet she said she had sorted her seeds. She was living by her own inner law. She was living by the Tao. She's wearing her starflower shirt. So when she yells at you to go to hell, you don't take offense. And all her children grew up just wonderfully and normally, even though their mother just yelled all the time, you know. So I mean, the whole idea is you can yell all you want as long as you are you know, you've sorted your seeds, and you are like the goddess who can make sure the corn grows, you know, properly, because she's you know, she has sorted her seeds. And so even though she is yells and is difficult and in the outer world, no one takes offense at her. because that's her inner law. I don't know. I just thought that was funny.
Tim, would you like to go next?
Sure, this is fascinating stuff. I'm absorbing all this on the tail of a conversation I had with my sister this morning. It seems like what we are striving for is the better angels of our nature. You know, nature itself has no discrimination. It's everything full blast. And the human being has this wonderful capacity to discriminate and to decide we're going to put our energy into this direction, which the rest of nature basically is unable to do because it doesn't have conscious authority. So I've been carrying on this conversation with my sister for years about the dangers of AI, which is a subject I'm really worried about, have been for many years. And she just doesn't share my alarm. And I'm once again trying to describe what it's about. Why is it that AI is so dangerous, and why is it that it's so hard for all these experts to figure out a way to keep it from wiping out the human beings? And when it comes down to, for me, is a way of supercharging our maturity process. How can we evolve the human being faster so that we can be in control of the tools that we create? And here's the situation that AI is the first tool that we have created that we cannot control. And when it gets to the point of what they call the singularity, which is when the machines become as capable as a human being, then we lose all control. And up until that point, we have this capacity to make some changes and adjustments. And it seems to me that what that is about is not programming. It's not about politics. It's about inner work. It's about how can we subsume the part of ourselves that is the 2-year-old that just is power hungry. And of course, our history is full of people like Putin that just tromp all over everybody to get what they want. And basically, human beings are the same all over the world and all through history. We are basically really good people. We love each other. We want to cooperate, but we have these tendencies that are violent and unfriendly. And those are very small parts of us. And by the same token, there are very few people who are actually psychopaths and rule the world like Putin does. So how do we not get on top of people like that, but get on top of our own tendency to want to control things instead of be inclusive to everybody? And that's basically the solution to the AI problem is being able to become human beings that are concerned about people, other people, as well as ourselves. And it seems to me that all of this stuff feeds into this same intention to try to become more conscious, to be more loving, to be able to be more cooperative, and to concentrate on the fact that people just need very, very simple things to be happy. You know, food, clothing, shelter, and friends, people to love, and a meaningful life. And that's very, very easy to achieve. I've lived under the poverty line for about 12 years, and I've never been happier. This is a process that I call downward mobilization. I've actually been trying to make less and less money every year and to be happier, to try to find that place where the human being is really fulfilled in their little tiny lives. And it seems to me that this is possible for everybody. And yet there's so many people that amass billions of dollars trying to find that secret. You know, what it comes down to is being alive in your own skin and being appreciative of what you have around you is basically all there is to it.
Well, thank you,
Thank
Jim.
you.
Azin?
Sorry, I'm distracted today. So I was thinking about the hands that do the separation. What hands? What is the hand? So to me, the first thing that came to my mind is our values. Like Jung says, things that are good for us in the morning of our lives is different from what is important for us in the evening of our lives. So we change, we grow, and our values changes. So I think the hands, the separation is based on our values. But then there's this unconscious force. Like I had my 12th dream a couple of nights ago, and it was about giving up the ruling on my psyche by the ego and giving into the self. So sometimes this separation comes from the self, and all through our life we choose things and they turn out to be completely idiotic. You know, what was I thinking when I thought this is good and this is bad? I was so stupid. I was dumb, you know. So things change, and I think just letting this unconscious part, this unknown part of our psyche to do this separation is important. We cannot do all this separation with our mind and our thinking. So 20 minutes, 30 minutes before our session start today, it was Persian New Year. So I had my, I set my table. I'll show you the table. This is a 5,000 years table. People do this. And when I was young, I always thought, this is stupid. What does it mean to, if you want to choose what kind of seed you want to grow this year, you look at the weather forecast, you see that how is the water situation, and then you make a decision. But how would they choose what seed to grow this year? They would put seeds from different like wheat, lentil, and stuff. And by the New Year Eve, they would look at them and which one was growing better. So that year they would do that. You know, that was a kind of omen, you know. But now I'm old. I'm older. I do this table for the last 14 years. I've been alone. Nobody comes to my house at the New Year. I was always by myself. But I do this table like because it connects us as a nation. And the last 40 years, this government, the Islamic government, has done anything that they could to stop these ceremonies and these traditions. And our nation is still doing it. Even me as a person, only by myself out of Iran, we do this. Because the values are different right now. You understand the meaning of something that is there after 5,000 years. You know what I mean? And this makes just incredible. So a couple of days ago, there was this the last Wednesday of the year, Iranians jump over the fire. I told you about the Siavash myth. And so that's that's related to Siavash. Everybody wants to go through the fire and be pure. So it's really interesting that this sorting and this separating of the seeds, life and time, the hand of time is doing this. What is important for the psyche remains. It changes, it's manifested differently, but it's there, it stays there, it comes and goes and it remains. So that's another aspect of separating good and bad. Let me show you my little table here.
Wow, that's amazing.
I'm gonna send a picture of every thing that is on this table has a meaning. You see the seed and a green seed.
We can barely hear you, Azine.
Okay, did you see the seeds?
Yes.
That was lentil seed. I put it in a coconut. Well, I'm gonna send a picture of this table to you. I did an interview a couple of days ago about this, about Caucasia Hajifiruz. So I just want to say that let the thinking part do its part, and just be open to bigger processes that is happening in our life and in existence in general.
Thank you so much, Azim, for sharing that with us.
Thank
Yeah, it's
you.
beautiful. I mean, I've never seen Thanksgiving Day look that good.
And Happy New Year. Happy
Yes.
New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Persia
love
is
the-
it's such a wonderful culture. It's just amazing what we lost
Yes.
when Persia was somewhat, I don't know, it's still going on though, Azine,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
we are alive.
It's a beautiful civilization. Yes, I agree.
Thank you.
All the poetry and literature and art, beautiful.
And to carry it forward thousands of years, I mean, that's just amazing. Thank you, Zen.
Sure. Thank you for listening.
Dahlia, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I have a few things relating to sorting things or seeds out. So few personal things I think I'll share. When the war started, I think I was in a kind of freeze phase, like very debilitating phase where you don't know what to do, you don't want to be very paranoid. But when you decide what you're going to do if the war happens and you take actions, you start to learn and to go to trainings and to know the real situation, it changes. Then I noticed I can then live my life the rest of the time. Like it gives some energy back when I know what I'll do. So it's clear. And but there's also another thing, I also from personal sphere and what I want to do with my life, that I know that I can't take the same approach. I cannot just decide for the next 15 or 20 years, because I don't know, even for having a family or something like that. And even when I see other people doing or not doing, and kind of comparing and trying to try the clothes or the situations of other people, it completely doesn't help me at all. And the only comfort I can get is, I know like in Rilke, in Letters to a Young Poet, he says like, you have to live the question sometimes. So it's like, but it's so hard. And I would like just to decide and do things this way, but So for me, it's like two approaches of sorting things out. Maybe I can share. So that's it for me.
Oh, I love it. You know, two different ways of sorting things out and, you know, living the question, you know, it's one of my favorite quotes. And Julie,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that sorting things out, you know, for in the feminine, I think is such it is a very human task, you know, and it's one that's very related to the human world. You know, Angelique, I was just wondering too. We were talking about the inner law and the Greek deities, especially the feminine deities. How in your own life have the Greek deities helped you define what your inner law is? You know, I mean, or what is being asked of you as a human being, a unique human being? I mean, because it seems like they've informed you.
Through suffering,
Yeah.
through suffering, so that the need for control is broken down all the time. I think that was my story. That is my story. The need of the ego to control one's life story needs to constantly be crushed for people like me, I guess. So it's constantly being crushed. So there's a lot of pain and tears and frustration. But I think for, I wonder, what is your question exactly? I'm so sorry I've missed
Well,
this.
I just wondered, you came in a little bit late and you know, but I was just wondering, one of the things that I was wondering is, you know, I don't feel that conscious myself. You know, I mean, I have great gaps of unconsciousness within me that I really, it's difficult for me to become conscious of. But you know what, we're talking about sorting the seeds. What is your inner law? And we were showing how different that is from ethical morality. And I was sort of illustrating it by the feminine deities of the Greek.
All right. Yes. I guess then the answer is Demeter has one quality as goddess, which is Demeter Thesmophoria is her name. Thesmos in Greek means law. But initially it didn't mean the law that is established by the state, but actually nature's laws, which then transform into inner laws. So at the festival of Demeter Thesmophoria, it was only women that were allowed to take part. And they would again sacrifice little piglets, like at the Mystery Santa Lucis, but then they would spend quite a bit of time in the underground, because Thesmi, which means the nature's laws, they always come from the depths and the dark depths. So they would sacrifice the little piglets and they would throw things into openings, into cracks of the earth that were designed specifically for this. And then after a few days, they would retrieve them and they would mix them, creating so they would mix the parts of the sacrifices with different substances, and they would create little votaries to offer to the goddesses. So, so the laws, I guess, from matriarchal times seem to come from the depths of the earth, and they seem to be dictated by Demeter. And then the women seem to be the bringers of these laws to the rest of the society. So yes, I guess it was a quite chthonic again process. There were also quite secret things taking place, words again exchanged during Thesmophoria at night. Yes, I can write down for everyone. Demeter Thesmophoria. That's it. And it means she who brings the thesmos. And thesmos means the laws. Thesmos is the law. So, and Thesmophoria is used as a quality of Demeter, but also as the name of the festival taking place. I could send you more on the festival and what was actually happening, but bringing the laws from below is actually the meaning of Thesmophoria. Bringing up the laws. And if you think it of the unconscious is like bringing from deeper into the unconscious the laws of one's living in the surface. So it's like checking for the dreams to bring your own boundaries, the limits. Yes, to bring the limits of how your own personal limits of how you're going to live this life. So waiting for the unconscious to set the laws. And I think partly is what has happened to me. I feel I live by laws that I was blind towards before 2009. I would never know them. I would have never fathomed them.
Angelique, I think this is exactly what I said about the grains. The nature choosing which grain you're going to plant this year.
That's right. Very true.
Thank you.
It reminds me of, you know, one thing Jung said was that the animals are more moral than us because they know their inner law. And we don't know our inner law. And our inner law, as Angelique was talking about in 2009, and it's not, ego does not have immediate access to it. It has to learn it, you know, from Thesmophoria, you know, from the depths. It needs to bring up that, you know, the manifestation of all these Greek deities, you know, what I'm saying to myself is that these are expressions of an inner law in all of us, you know, that has been manifested in the outer world in unbelievably clear way. You know, but, oh, and Aniela Yaffe says that we're free to the extent that we either live by that inner law that ego doesn't know about, needs to find out about, or that we resist it. And she says, what does it mean to resist that law? Sorry, that's enough.
But I think there's not one law. I mean, if you see these archetypes as forces of nature, and each god has their own value system, right? And they sometimes contradict each other. So I think it's different for every one of us. There's not a single law that is
And
true.
there's a procession of them as well.
Yeah, also true.
Well, thank you, Angelique. Ava, would you like to go next?
Oh no, I don't want. This is the crucial question, and the only thing that comforts in is the work with my dreams, knowing my bear figure, for example. And you had you all have described the problem. I don't have anything to add. It's a journey. Inannas and Demeters and so on. And it goes on and on, as in it is in Diane's stream yesterday. Was it Diane you had that cooking? Oh, okay.
Great. Well, thank you, Ava. Charles, do you have a comment for us?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Camelia?
No, not today. But
Not
thank you.
today. Wow. Well, the last row went really fast. And that's all of us. And Craig, you're muted.
I
Go ahead. Diane.
I have a question. You know, so there's another ambiguity here, that. So you said earlier that we humans were needed to sort this values because the Godhead was unable to. And then we were just saying that I think what Angelique said, and I think maybe you agreed with that too, Craig, that it has to come up from the depths. So I'm just trying to figure out how to hold those two opposites at this moment, because it's a new, I mean, Jung's, this is his very controversial point of view about God needing us to, because he doesn't have the capacity to be moral. He needs humans to evolve his consciousness to be moral. And yet, you know, bringing up the laws that from the depths seems, again, this is probably on surface contradictory, and I'm trying to understand how I can hold that.
Well,
So if anybody has, yes, go ahead.
I think you hit on a very important point. The idea of living by your inner law is not to be, is to be the empty vessel of what the of the images that come to you, and to consider them and to contemplate them. That's living by your inner law, you know. And to be, now the philosopher's stone cannot be found in nature. Nature and the pleroma cannot produce the philosopher's stone, and neither can the human ego. The only way that the philosopher's stone, this thing that when any metal, base metal touches it, turns it into gold, this object of transformation, that which makes symbols, that can only be created with this being who can who is separated and broken from nature, and that is the human consciousness. Because can you imagine Earth if you were you came from another planet and there's nothing? It's a very pleasant place, but all it has is bear and deer. You know, they're you know, Robinson Jeffers, this what he called them the anti-humanist poet, and I believe Tim was born right near where his house was. You know, he thought, you know, that that it was unfortunate that man appeared on the earth, because you know, there's been a few bad times or bad consequences of it. But as far as the evolution of the God image through the astrological ages of you know, Taurus through Pisces and now Aquarius, there is something happening in consciousness. Now, God is or first of all, if you're going to talk about that being that created life, I think it's Mother Nature. You know, I think what God provides is meaning, or this, you know, I don't know, I can't get into it, but within ourselves, it's our inner law. God and the inner law are pretty much the same thing. You know, I don't, that's what my wife was saying. She doesn't want to be God, her father, and she doesn't want him to be his child. And I said, well, you're not, you know, I mean, whatever it is something that you need to find out through, as Angelique said, through our dreams. You know, that's the only way I've been able to find it out. And I feel still very unconscious. There's so much more to do.
I feel a little confused by this because I'm not sure what Jung means by the animals live by their inner law.
They don't stray from it. I mean, they live by they're an oak tree, a seed, and they become an oak tree. That's not what happens to us.
Well, and I think that's because we have free will. We have the capacity to live outside of our programming. And that's both a blessing and a curse, because of course, human nature is mostly beneficent, but has this evil streak that of course is a reflection of the thing in nature. But what the human being can do is sublimate that evil, or ritualize it in some way that it's not harmful. It's honored, but it doesn't just burst out like a flood and ruin everything. And it seems like we have the awareness that we have free will, and so therefore we get to create a model of what a human life looks like that honors the darkness but follows the light. And this is, of course, what religion is all about, trying to make a workable society that's not just tooth and claw. And so I'm a little bit confused about what it means to live by your inner law, unless the inner conclave has been ruled by our higher angels, because animals live by their inner law, but of course they don't have much choice. As human beings, if we live by our inner law, we want to make sure there's a distinction between that and just doing whatever feels good, which is what the animals do.
Yeah, the whole idea is to become, how do you become human? I guess is the whole thing. And the human has one foot in both worlds, in the inner and the outer world. And my wife, you know, we discussed the way she described it, and she described it almost like Plotinus describes it. You know, the idea, we have free will, as Agnella Yappi says, to the extent that do we become, do we let the root, this massive root that's under the earth, flower, or do we let it die? That's our free will, what she says. And it comes in that poem, you know, turning and turning in the widening gyre. The falcon can't hear the falcon. You know, and this idea now that the God is ego, consciousness. It's not this massive root that needs to flower, you know, from below the surface. But Plotinus had this wonderful statement that the self, the archetype of organizing archetype of wholeness within us, is our conductor, and he is standing in the middle of a circle, and we have our back to him, and we need to turn and face him if we're to play our proper music. You know, that was this idea of Plotinus. You know,
well, Azine asked this really important question: how do you know that? I think you're talking about what the quality of human nature is.
Yeah, you said humans have this nature that is good, and there's only a few psychopaths. And then we have this ability to go beyond our nature and choose, because we have the ability to, just the free will, and animals don't have it. I put question mark on every word on this sentence.
Well, what I
Because,
see,
because if you're acting evil, it is in our nature. You said that humans are good, then naturally they're good, and then they have this free will to do evil as well. If I'm manifesting something evil, if I'm doing evil, why should I say it's not in my nature? It is in our human nature to be evil as well. And I don't think that animals don't have free will. I think this comes from this idea that human beings are like the superior creation, and every other creature is just below us. They don't have emotions, they don't have consciousness, they don't have free will. These are all, I don't agree with any of them. I've seen birds giving food to fish. I've seen lions hungry and hunting, and they pause and they don't kill a baby deer. They just lick it. I don't know if my cat has free will to choose my house. He comes here and he sleeps in the patio. And whenever I leave the house, he follows me because he's worried or he's curious. You know, he was thinking, oh, what is my human doing? And he sits there until I finish my job, whatever it is outside in the complex, and he comes back following me. But dogs do that. And I think we are past this idea of that, of human superiority. And I think we are complicated creatures, very complicated creatures. Just see how many archetypes, how many forces is in us. And I think defining humans and defining what human is, what an animal is I see it as reductionist approach. We are
Well,
much more complicated.
I agree with you. All these are really fuzzy boundaries. But the fact is, if you look back, if one of my favorite techniques that I learned from my father is just run history backwards in your head. And you can see that there's a progression in the human species that we see nowhere else, that we are evolving our own culture. And it's not that animals don't do that. We look at the monkeys in Japan that learn how to throw rice in the water before they eat it. You know, there's an evolution of culture in that.
No, I'm not saying animals and humans are just like the same, but we don't know their consciousness. Even if you want to say if we have evolved or not, like we say we are civilized, okay, civilized nations. And then we go and read about African, I think this word is Umbutu, that it means, it's a huge word for them and it's a lot of meanings. But one of the meanings is that I'm here because of you.
Right.
I live for you. If I'm happy and you're not happy, Umbutu is not working. Okay. This is the peak of civilization to me. And it was a rule in a very primitive tribe in Africa. So I think we have to pause. And I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. I see the difference, but take a pause and give a little space to the things that are not known to us. Like animal consciousness, just try to understand your dog or your cat. It's just impossible. They're living in another world.
Boy, I think that's absolutely right. And of course we're just beginning to understand how deep animal lives are. But what I'm trying to concentrate on is we have the capacity to actually create a culture that we pass on to our kids and becomes their reality.
Yeah.
And so in a way, the human being has wrested that power away from nature to create our own mechanism to improve. And so getting back to the question of human nature, when you run history backwards, it gets more and more brutal and the possibilities decrease. And so what that means to me is all of the things that we've created, things like hospitals and insurance and you know, governments, all of that comes out of the good side of human nature that's doing the Ubuntu as the rubber hits the road. So we're able to create higher and higher civilizations by responding to our higher natures. And as long as we're able to keep doing that at the pace that outpaces our production of tools, then we'll be okay. But as soon as we create something that that we can no longer morally control, like nuclear weapons, then it's just a matter of time before we destroy ourselves and everything else.
Kat, did you have a comment?
I did, but then I forgot it.
Oh, okay.
I was getting into listening to what Azine said. She just takes me off my mind, and that was it. Head like a sieve.
Well, we'll have a lot more to discuss this. I say these two chapters, the next one is on the dark side of nature, not human nature, but the dark side of nature. And you know, we need to also bring into this discussion the fact that we're not the masters in our own house. You know, the archetypal realm that Angelique spoke of so eloquently is also present here, you know. So we'll have to, we'll discuss both of those next time in a pretty, that's a pretty amazing little chapter 12. And we'll just go through that. And then after that, we'll talk about a more pleasant topic like death. On dreams and death. Okay. Well, anyway, we'll have more. We'll have more time to discuss this next time, Tim, too. But that's a good. You made some good points. So we'll see you guys all next.
Much.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, everybody.
Looking forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you,
See you
everybody.
next time, guys.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
week.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Dahlia, too, by the way. I love that.